everybody. Thank you very much for attending the webinar today. Well, I'm going to kick things off based on the time that we've got allocated today. So thanks all for joining. And today, really, we're going to go through a very short webinar just in terms of how we can work with and illustrate some opportunities for manufacturers to get real results from content marketing. And really, commitment is the key word of the day. So it's about how organizations really have started on this journey, but again are struggling to get the results that they require. So today we're going to explore some of the research from the Content Marketing Institute, and then we're going to go into some of the key takeaways to help you improve your current practice of content marketing. So we talked about moving away from being a usual suspect, and from a lot of the research it comes out that many people are still thinking very tactically about the approach, and really it's one of the most proven B2B practices. And these are some of the common challenges where people are either setting the wrong goals, not setting goals at all, struggling to differentiate would be one of the main ones, and still thinking campaigns rather than an always-on strategy. So today we're going to go through some of the highlights from the content marketing research. We're then going to look at really what content and commitment really means to achieve success, and then look at 8 commitment goals that hopefully are going to give people an opportunity to take away some ideas and thoughts today. And then we'll focus on a couple of Q&A session at the end if we have time. So if you look at content marketing as a practice, the research has come back from the Content Marketing Institute, where many organizations of varying size and shape are using it to drive performance. And this is pretty evenly spread by the segmentation. It's not really a practice that many small organizations do, typically down to the investment, but really it's a lot for large and to mid-sized organizations who are typically using this as a best practice to achieve results. So if you look at the results and really the types of organizations that are driving the program from a content marketing point of view, you can see the types of organization from a turnover perspective, again, represents organizations that typically have 50 million to 500 million pound turnover to be the sort of key sweet spot for where organizations are using this type of approach. And again, the types of people who responded to the research were typically driven around content marketing and sort of a broader understanding within the sort of more general management job roles. But really, the feedback in the research has come from the marketing persona and really the sales and marketing leadership. So the questions were asked, first of all, does your organization use content marketing? If you look at the overriding behavior of most organizations that fall into the segments that we've just talked about, 86% of those are actually using this as a practice to drive their marketing strategy, which is obviously a high percentage of people looking to drive value from their marketing comms. But again, if we're starting to look at how it's structured within an organization, only a small amount of people in the organization are actually working on a content marketing strategy. And really, it's not centralized in a business. And really, this comes back down to the level of ownership within a company. So a best practice organization typically has the whole organization fully on board and contributing to the strategy, whereas at the moment it still sits within a very small segment of the market. So the next question would be how you describe your organization's content maturity. If we're looking at how manufacturers perceive themselves within a content marketing strategy, it can be clearly highlighted that there is quite a spread, and really many organizations feel not particularly sophisticated in their approach to content marketing, and really that stems from issues associated with budget, associated with new practices and maybe technology they're using. And many organizations, if you look at that, nearly 60% are still in the early days of adopting a content marketing approach. So if you look at the type of budget that's being allocated to this type of strategy, you can clearly look at the results from the survey. On average, typically 22% of the marketing budget from a manufacturing point of view is actually contributed to investment in the materials, the staff, the ability to be able to deliver on such an approach. And it's a very small percentage in terms of budget. If you're comparing that to organizations that are having success, typically more than 50% of the budget is actually spent on content marketing activity to achieve the success. And this isn't necessarily producing the content, but it's typically on the paid channels and the promotional, the amplification of the content. So when we're starting to look at maybe some of the common threads that many people are adopting the practice, but many people or organization manufacturers have only a small team responsible for content marketing and the small budgets being allocated to it, you can see that the people are really just toe in the water activity to really achieving some of the the critical things you can achieve success. And when we're starting to look at what success looks like for an organization, how many marketeers rate their success? Really, most people are looking at saying they're very successful. Only 10% really is showing good success from the program. Most people, if you can look at it, remaining 80 to 90% are finding themselves with moderate or minimal success. And really, as we talked about, this stems from either level of investment, but also the ability to actually achieve some of the results or put in some of the investment required within a manufacturing firm to be successful in content marketing. One of the big things from the research came away that 54% are actually not clear on success. They might be investing in the right materials, they might have the right team involved, but if they don't know what success looks like, really it's a difficult moving beast to actually identify how they can actually then start to define success, and then from that build on that over time. So if you will, the question within the survey was then asked around how do you attribute your organization increase in success with content marketing? You can see that with the contributing factors for many manufacturers isn't about necessarily the volume of content being produced. Really, it's about the time, the right strategy, and really the quality of the content is really some of the key drivers for the manufacturers to be successful. And what some of the best-in-class manufacturers are able to do is make sure they've got the right level of organizational buy-in, but also that they actually have premium content being promoted through the right channels. One of the biggest failings of many content marketing strategies is they focus too much on the content and not enough on the audience. So really, when we're starting to look at critical success factors and really what it takes, we could probably add them up and put them into a curve. And this is taken from the best practices and really the journey that many companies are going on. So from the research, if you're looking at really what commitment actually means to a manufacturer, really the strategy for many at the moment is where they've got a bit of a toe in the water, where it's a very tactical approach. They may be driving campaigns. There's no real definition of success. Some of the campaigns that are driven have basic or no personas attached to them, and really this is achieving some of the poor results that many content marketers going into their sort of strategy felt they could achieve a lot better results. And if we're starting to look at perhaps that move from where many manufacturers are at the moment, from that toe in the water strategy to an all-in, it really involves a higher level of commitment from the organization and from the marketing and sales function. That really has to come from understanding what does success really look like. And that isn't something that can be defined over days, weeks, or months. It's really about having a long-term, year-on-year strategy about how you can build audience and how you can drive success and how you can then measure that success. So that comes really, if you're looking at some of the best-in-class organizations, looking at having a clearly defined strategy around what it means to be successful, having that content strategy documented. Now, most organizations in manufacturing are doing a lot of activity, but when challenged, really, do they actually have things documented? Do they have the personas documented? Do they have the messaging, the pain points, the actual publishing schedule, the actual tone of voice? Many organizations are just still in the realms of getting content out and serving that through as many channels as they have time to do. So having a documented strategy and a clear plan, which allows you to then start to manage the content marketing as a continuous business process rather than campaigns, is going to give you the biggest level of success, making sure that everybody in the organization knows how they can achieve and what their role is as part of that contribution to the content strategy, whether that's inputting ideas, whether that's research, whether that's actually working to promote the content. So when we're looking at some of these best practices, high levels of budget are being allocated to content marketing, and really it's focused on using the data or focusing on the intelligence that we're getting from the results to incrementally improve the program. And this is where, a data-driven approach to content marketing is really critical to ensure success. And what that will give you is ability to justify and engage on a program as you go forward. So what we're suggesting is, based on the research, it stems from many manufacturers. There is a very unstrategic approach to their content marketing. And what they're looking at is really a toe in the water strategy rather than an all-in. So what we aim to do as part of the webinar is just talk through some of the key commitment goals manufacturers can do to really understand how they can be more successful in their content strategy. And those 8 commitment goals can be broken down. The commitment goal number 1 really stems from the ability to train, and train for a marathon, not a sprint. Because content audience, or should I say content marketing or audience building, is one of the key strategies that you need to be able to think about. And really, that takes time to build an audience. Many organizations, when they're looking to change, going from maybe a manufacturer going from a telemarketing approach, using the sales team to drive a lot of the communication, where perhaps there's digital channels that can be used to help them be more efficient and run faster. But enabling an organization to use content and to use the digital channels takes time. And that time really takes investment and effort. And that's where many organizations are struggling, is that they find that they're looking for ROI in the very early days. When the campaign goes live from a telemarketing approach, you're looking for leads and sales immediately. Whereas moving to a sort of strategy around monetization, first of all, you have to be able to build audience and then start to really economically extract that audience and turn that into leads and opportunities whilst maintaining an audience. Nobody likes to be sold to, and part of people engaging with digital channels really means that they need to have buy-in to that voice that the manufacturer is creating to ensure that you can actually then convert that audience through. So as you see in this diagram, if you look at the journey that many people go on, going from a current state all the way through to monetization, you can see that many manufacturers are thinking that they need to run digital channels, but what they need to do is make sure that they're doing it in the right way. And really, they've been used to having steady growth using their traditional approach, and their current state seems to be going in the right direction. But as they know, the failure to actually respond to the digital challenge really is going to create problems for them, where over time they're going to know they're going to lose ground, and ultimately then they're going to drop growth. And really, without actually fully digitalizing their sales and marketing approach, they're going to fall into the trough of disillusionment and really feel that they're actually going to be losing out to the competitors. So if you look at, you must be bold, you must be a first mover, but really you need to think this is a marathon, not a sprint. And really, if you're looking at your old model, moving from a current state all the way through to monetizing your audience. So if you're going from a traditional telemarketing, sending out, emails, to a building audience, always on content marketing approach, you need to set realistic timescales, but also you need to understand the level of investment and time that it's going to take. So the commitment number 2, where many manufacturers are struggling, is the area of differentiation. Obviously, from the research, it came back that many organizations are struggling to be able to identify how they can be different in the market. And really, that is absolutely critical to making sure that they can really drive a program which clearly to the target customer is different to their audience. So if you look at particular organizations who have no points of differentiation, really you need to look deeper and differently to how you drive your marketing communication. Because differentiation is not a new problem, and many organizations find that, by trying to come up with the next creative idea is only really going to fall on deaf ears. Really, they need to look deeper into the organization and find how you can stop following your competition, stop trying to copy what they do, and really start to think of a brand and how you can really differentiate it in a way which is not copyable. And that is very difficult for many manufacturers, especially when you're starting to look with a very difficult ability to put a shine on a widget. So where differentiation is possible, it is possible if you start to look more deeper, maybe around the experience that you deliver. So when you're looking at engaging with your customers and your content marketing, it's really important that when you're building your content strategy, you have differentiation planned and making sure that everything you do within that strategy is to make sure that you stand out from the crowd. If you take the coffee market as a good example in a B2C scenario, where, coffee, everybody serves coffee, the local retailer sells coffee, the garage sells coffee. What separates the coffee vendors and the brands is really how they deliver an experience around their proposition. So they provide free Wi-Fi, they provide, an ability to sit in a nice environment. They have cakes, sandwiches, everything delivered in a very nice sweet wrapper, which allows you to have more of an experience and a more of an affinity to a brand. So we believe content differentiation or marketing differentiation is absolutely possible when you don't have many points of differentiation. You just have to look a bit deeper and perhaps look at the experience across the whole customer life cycle to be able to build brand and to be able to build message. Commitment goal number 3 from a content marketing point of view would then be the ability to make sure that your messages are tied to your core. One of the biggest failings of many manufacturers and companies who do embark on a content marketing program is that they struggle to come up with content ideas, but also they forget to tie their story to actually their value proposition, and they end up producing content that has no relevance or tie to their organization or to their products or services. So if you imagine this tree to be a nice way of explaining, at the ground you have the soil where you have your company culture and your values, and you have some 3 or 4 actionable values. Then what we're looking to do is build a core story around your company's existence, the why you exist and your core points of differentiation. And we want to present that in a visual, nice way, providing words, colors and pictures to be able to describe that core story. And then from a content marketing point of view, we want to then take that core story and tell internal, external stories are always coming back to that core story. So we're making sure that the content strategy is centered around what you can deliver and what you can achieve, ensuring that every piece of content reads why you're different and why you can enable an organization in the right way. Now, this isn't putting your value proposition front and center. It's making sure that your tone of voice, your messages are embedded into the content that you produce, but really does tie back to that core story. And the best way to do that is actually audit every piece of content that goes out to make sure it ties back to that particular core story. So what we would suggest is also, from a point of view of commitment, we would suggest many manufacturers start thinking about producing the right content for the right strategy. One of the biggest opportunities is to develop the right, relevant and engaging content. But for many manufacturers, they tend to be developing content for campaigns or new product launches rather than thinking of an always-on strategy. So what we would encourage many organizations to do is really think about the goal that they're targeting, whether that's demand generation, whether that's account-based marketing, whether that's customer marketing, sales enablement. And they develop a content strategy for that particular purpose. Where we see many confusion happening is where product marketing collateral is used to drive audience growth, which is basically promoting, the products and services they're using rather than thinking about what the target audience has in terms of problems and solutions. So really what we're looking to do is align the right content to the right strategy. And so as a commitment, we would encourage many manufacturers to really align what the purpose of producing this content strategy is and make sure that it's clearly aligned to an output of either thought leadership, enabling the sales team, partner marketing, not just focusing on content that can please everybody, and by therefore pleases everybody, pleases nobody. So if you're looking at a simple demand generation funnel, really with content, if you're looking at driving inbound traffic, you want to produce top of the funnel thought leadership content. You want to be able to then use and take those attention and build interest through creating playbooks, e-guides, webinars and videos. And really what we want to be able to do then is start to create a desire for what you offer and really bringing that down to e-guides or methodologies or videos. And then finally get people to take action, which is presenting them with, product sheets, case studies. One of the biggest problems many manufacturers have is presenting their value proposition too early, i.e. their product sheets trying to grab attention or their, case studies trying to grab attention when really that person hasn't even been invited in for a drink. So the importance of actually structuring your content around the right objectives and obviously then the right methodology is critical for success. If we look at commitment goal number 5, and we mentioned in the research, many organizations, especially manufacturers, have not designed and documented and then optimized a content supply chain. Now, most manufacturers will be very familiar with content supply chains or supply chains in whole, being able to efficiently take and create a product which can then be used and drive value for the customer. So when you're looking at your content strategy, we fully recommend that you actually document the stages of your content marketing strategy, the key elements to that, and make sure you then look to be able to optimize that and ensure that you take, both the internal and external teams along with you to ensure that you can then start to look at areas of opportunity. Good examples of this is doing a good strong set of documentation around your content supply chain. So making sure you're doing good research and making sure that research feeds into the content strategy and the experience that you want to deliver. And then taking, the content strategy, making sure the promotional channels are being used in the best way. But the most important thing, the production that you do needs to be able to support the channels. A good example would be producing a piece of content that can be then used in multiple channels and making sure that you can then review which content formats perform in which channel for be able to feeding back into the planning process for you to be able to then go back and make sure you plan in the channels and the formats early on. So the process of documenting your content strategy and making sure then you're looking at each stage being a critical set of activities and making sure each of them are fulfilled is the best way to optimize your process. And if you imagine best practice manufacturers optimize the content supply chain in a way to achieve better performance, and that is using the data to see how each piece of content is performing in the best way. So really what we're looking for is the commitment goals of organizations to, start to think about it's a long-term marathon, not a sprint. We want to be able to make sure that we focus on planning differentiation into the program. We document it along the way, and we ensure that we actually have a very strong methodology to producing and optimizing the content for the right channels. And make sure we're very strong when we're producing the content. We know that what the purpose of that content is, and not crossing the lines of where product content meets audience building content. So commitment goal number 6, which would really be focusing on planning your content. And as we mentioned, many organizations are still very reactive on the way they're producing content. So this is a content, what we call a user experience taken from one of our customers. And really this actually highlights perhaps some of the structure that you can drive a theme throughout the year where you're looking at regulation, risk, differentiation, processing, design and ease, and performance, and looking at those themes that you would communicate throughout one quarter, and then using that quarter's worth of content to be able to then tell a story and really why you as an organization are different, giving people useful tools and actions to be able to create and understand why you are the manufacturer of choice, and making sure that you plan in the formats and you plan the structure, moving somebody through maybe top of the funnel to conversion content, and then making sure that you're actually telling that whole story over a 12-month period, which is going to give you the best performance and best outcome. Second to last commitment goal, which we would actively encourage manufacturing content marketers to do, is focus on the why and the how rather than the what of measuring success. Creating a set of metrics is absolutely fine, but when you're starting to look at why you're measuring them and how you're going to improve them, it's far more important than actually looking at what you're measuring in the first place. As a provider, we get asked many times, what should we be measuring? And really, there's varying reasons why people should measure audience, whether they should measure conversions, whether they should measure marketing qualified leads. The key thing is making sure your organization is behind the why we're measuring them and how we go about it, ensuring they're part of that journey. Because as we looked at, most people class their post-campaign results analysis as merely average. Up to 40% don't even believe the measures that you're putting in place. So the job of the marketeer is really to get everybody primarily focused on the measures that we're looking at. And here you can see a couple of examples of what we would recommend as primary indicators, secondary indicators, and user indicators, which is allowing us to be able to communicate success. But really where we should spend our time as a marketeer is commit to educating on why we're measuring these metrics and then how we're going to use them. And the how is really about how we can improve conversions in the sales funnel. Where a lot of manufacturers are struggling is where they're producing a lot of content at the top of the funnel i.e. they're getting a lot of contacts coming through, but they're not converting to new opportunities. So the measures we want to be looking at is those conversion rates and making sure that we're actually enabling the sales team, maybe not with top of the funnel how-to guys, but really tools that are going to move the prospects through the process, maybe gap analysis tools, maybe additional competitive analysis tools, maybe roadmaps. But this is where you need to use your indicators and working with the sales teams to ensure that you're driving performance through and looking at the indicators to make sure that the organization's behind why we're measuring them and then how they can start to make an improvement on them. And as we all know, as manufacturing people, we want to make sure that we are actually shifting those metrics, month on month, quarter on quarter in the right direction, because we'll then be taking the organization along with us. Finally, what we find from a lot of the research that came out of the Content Marketing Institute report, but also what we advise a lot of our clients, is that you need to be focused on a commitment of putting paid budget behind what you do. And putting paid budget on behind what you do is paying for audience if you don't have them. So a good example of this would be working on organizations that actually have and want to be able to accelerate their content marketing performance. So they would identify a publisher, say in the UK, the manufacturer, and being able to then publish your content through their channel to be able to expedite and use their audience to build your brand, but also to be able to then start to do lead generation. Or where we want to be putting heavily onto social, where we're paying for audience to bring them off paid social activity. And really what we're suggesting is any part of a content marketing strategy should really have a commitment to put 30% of your budget, not on content production, but on actually promoting that through paid channels to achieve best practice and best performance. So again, anything above this metric would be great, but again, it's just being sensible on the rate of return you'd expect from a content marketing strategy. So some of the key takeaways that we would have, and really to make sure before I go into a specific case study, everybody gets a very clear understanding of why commitment is the main tool for success, is that many organizations still have a toe in the water strategy. It's still very tactical an approach. It's still very difficult for them to, get the organization fully behind. So using some of the tools, setting realistic expectations, and making sure organizations are training for that marathon is absolutely critical for success. What we also want to make sure is that you have a documented and optimized content supply chain, which is running it as a business process, not as a campaign, and making sure you have the right team around you to make that successful. Most manufacturers, in fact, many people that we work with have an internal team but use agencies such as ourselves to help you drive best performance. And that's really looking at helping you optimize that content supply chain and doing a lot of the heavy lifting to ensure that you have a very strong publishing calendar to keep that always on program. And also, when we're looking at takeaways, differentiation is absolutely the key. And the key message here is about delivering an experience rather than just smashing out content. Delivering experience is absolutely critical for success. And that experience could be as little as having a really lovely landing page where somebody comes to, which is very different and engaging. Or it could be down the way the tone of your emails is crafted to make sure that you drive conversions and people through to the next stage. Or whether it's actually looking at the whole customer journey and making sure that the visual style and identity is identified, which is different to your competitors, but is delivering more of a deeper level of experience rather than just focusing on your core value proposition. So when you're looking at some of these takeaways, it's really important that you're mining a strategy rather than focusing on the tactics of just getting content out for the sake of it. If we take an example client of ours, we've been working with them for about 2.5 years, where beforehand they had very little activity. What we built with them was a very clear way of taking out how they can take their combined heat and power proposition to market, and really doing that in a very effective way, targeting the whole value supply chain from people who would be effectively designing that at the beginning, people who are specifying, people who are actually then going through and wanting to really drive and implement this into the buildings or the factories that they would be effectively wanting to use their proposition for. So it had a multi-persona program, and really where we focused the content strategy was really around the technical requirements of what the target audience who weren't used to scoping and planning combined heat and power units. So the whole strategy was built around how we can enable the target audience over a 12-month period to be able to be in a position when they've at the end of that 12 months, being able to understand how they can really solve some of their sustainability and building targets whilst actually using combined heat and power cogeneration to support that. So the aim of the program really, in terms of performance of the site, increased from very limited traffic through to landing pages to actually having thousands of landing page views, thousands of blog views, visits, by basically targeting that audience within the right content in the right way, and ensuring that the metrics not only were there at the top of the funnel, but they were driven down to creating what we would effectively call marketing qualified leads. In essence, making sure that we've got the right target audience with the right persona in the right organization engaging. And the key strategy around this is we weren't necessarily chasing for somebody who wants to buy the lead or buy the proposition there and then. It was about creating the audience. It was about building that audience. And now they have a very engaged audience of 3,500 contacts that are the right person, the right organization, which they can then start to sell to and monetize. But beforehand, it was about building credibility about them as a vendor. So as you can see, the content cycle going from visitors to submissions to contacts is really the net output of a program that you can achieve if you focus on the right goals and set the right expectations. And therefore, subscribers and other types of propositions and metrics are key. But subscribers, contacts, conversions, and marketing qualified leads should really be the basis of how you identify success from a content marketing program. So just to conclude, and again, we wanted to keep the webinar quite short for everybody's time, but really what we have is ability for you to actually test your content strategy and see and audit it itself. So you can take the content audit. We will follow this up. It's a set of questionnaire that delivers you a bespoke report, which will identify some of the areas where you might need support or where you're struggling with your content marketing. And it's a good asset to share internally. And this will give you a good guidance around how effective your content strategy is. And for time purposes, we've actually run over our allotted time, but I was keen just to conclude and thank you very much for attending the webinar. Thank you very much, and look forward to following up.